in this world? Trains, money, and medium euros. So here we're taking a look at Railroad Revolution. Now in this game, players are going to be trying to increase the value of their particular railroad company. The game itself is a worker placement game where you'll be taking actions, but there is a slight twist we'll go over in a little bit. This is everything that comes in the box other than a couple other player colors, and we do have the game currently set up for a 2-player setup. Now there is a slight difference in a 2 and 3 player versus 4 player, and that some of the unused player stations do get put into the first station bonus slots to start. Now, as I said, the game is a worker placement, and I'm just going to cover the basics of these 4 actions and explain a little bit later about how these secondary actions work. But just so you know, whenever you take a top action, depending on the color worker, you do get to take an associated action below. The general idea of these 4 is you will place a worker in it and you will take the action. Now, you must be able to complete the action. However, you can do all of this in any order you want, so if doing something down here allowed you to pay for it, or even getting something here allowed you to pay, you can manipulate it in such a way that you can do it. The 4 basic actions are the station, which allows you to place a station out into a city that you currently have access to via rail. Place a railroad action allows you to place railroad tracks down, connecting to your existing network. The telegraph allows you to place a station in one of these Western Union places, and the trade allows you to sell off part of your company in the form of these items up here, stations and tracks. To break it down into further detail as far as these goes, the station, when doing so, you put your worker there and you must take your leftmost station and place it somewhere you have access to. Having access just means your rail network currently connects to that city. In the beginning of the game, players are just Washington and Charlotte unless they had gotten a bonus at the beginning that allowed them to connect further. When you place it, if you're the first station there, you place into the first station bonus slot. Now this allows you to get an additional benefit of it. And in the case of Charlotte here, it allows us to get 2 shares from the general supply. Now that is only available to the first station, the first person in that city, unless they took a secondary action down here that allowed them to break that rule. Once they've done that, they also do need to also pay $500 for the privilege of putting that city there, and they also get to choose to get the secondary action. In the case of this one, they're actually getting to choose to take either a purple or teal worker from the general supply. If you are a second person there, you would just get that second action. Each city can house at most 1 station of each player's color. The second action, the rail action, allows you to take your 2 most left rails and connect them to your existing network. For that, it costs you exactly $400. In addition, you need to pay an additional $100 for each triangle symbol within it. So if I were to pay my $400 for this and place here, because I do have access to it, this one would cost me nothing, and this one adds $100 to the cost, so the total cost would be $500. The third one, being the Western Union, simply allows me to take my leftmost station and place it into one of the Western Union offices. In doing so, it follows the same sort of rules as cities in that if I'm the first person there, I get a bonus. Now these will always get you shares via the number that's printed and a bonus potentially. So if I were to place here and I'm the first person, I would actually get 4 shares. In addition, there's on these that have the tiles, you can remove a worker from your either supply or your board completely and get an additional bonus. So here I could throw out a worker and gain $600. The final one on this board is to trade. Now this allows you to sell off part of your company, and this is the cool thing and also the reason why you always remove from the left, because as you build further up, your company becomes more valuable, and in doing so, pieces of your company are worth more. So it allows me to put a worker here and then I sell either a station or a track, whichever I have left most, for the printed value. Now in this case, I could only sell this one, and I could sell it for 500. But if I'd still had the station here, I would be able to decide which one to sell. So in this case, I could sell this piece of track and gain $500. Now this does go all the way up to 1,000. There is a secondary thing in here which allows me to flip over a train tile if I wish. Now that's always a may, and in doing so, you have these tiles next to you, and you can get more of them through different actions on the board. But if you flip them over, you gain their benefit immediately, but you lose the fact that they are worth 8 victory points, and you would need to use this action again or another action that flips one to get access to it again. So if this time I flipped it over, well, I got to take its benefit, but now it's no longer worth points. The next time I have this action, I could flip it back over. I don't get its benefit, but now it's worth its 8 victory points at the end of the game again. Now, as I said, there are additional actions down here that depend on the type of worker that you have. And in general, what you're going to have is you're going to have these purple workers, which are typically going to give you some sort of trade or something like that, such as this one allows me to flip over an engine. This one allows me to buy a new train tile. This one allows me to exchange workers. This one allows me to move up on this track, which we'll explain in a minute. The orange ones will basically allow you to save money or not pay money. So in this one, it actually allows me to ignore the cost of the city. This one allows me to reduce the cost of my tracks, etc., etc. The gray ones allow me to enhance the action that I'm taking. 2 of them allow me to break that rule about the first station bonus and get the first station bonus. The blue ones, on the other hand, are teal. They tend to allow you to enhance the action further in that, like this one here allows me to lay down an additional railroad for the same cost. Once you've taken one action on here and you've completed it in full, your turn is over. The only rule about at the end of your turn is that you must currently have 4 workers still between your supply and your board. An action that you can take at any time during your turn is here, where you can buy a worker of any color for $800. If at the end of your turn you meet one of your milestones, you can also turn them in. Now, milestones are pretty simple in that they just have things that you need to have accomplished, such as this one means that I have to have a station built in a level 1 city, and I have to have tracks connecting to at least 2 level 2 cities, but I also must have promoted a worker into that slot. And let's say I'd already had this, and the promote action is this one here, and it's on here too. And your white workers can always do it as a secondary, but any of your other colors can also take that in lieu of their normal. When you promote, you simply take that action there, you move the worker itself to the milestone. Now that worker is gone forever, and he's locked on that milestone until it's completed. At that point, he goes back to the supply. When you complete a milestone, you flip it over and it will be worth its points. And depending on if it's an A, B, or C, you will then go to the stack and grab the top 3, pick one that you want, you'll bring it out and put the others to the bottom of the stack. So that means you're going to have 2 milestone tracks that you can be working on. One other thing that can happen during your turn is if at any point you lay down track or build an office somewhere you have this deal symbol, at the end of your turn it will trigger a deal. Now the deals are what you commonly use these shares for in addition to money. If at the end of your turn you have triggered the deal, then this deal will come off. And if being the person that triggered it, you can take one or both of these deals. Once you've done it, then everyone else at the table may choose one of them to do. So there's a bit of strategy in when you trigger deals. You want to do it when you've got the shares to take advantage of it, and maybe your opponents do not. One action I didn't talk about really is this one here, and that is moving your things up this track. And the reason for this is it's allowing you to get these multipliers on endgame score. So if I were to put a purple worker here and take this action and then take this, I could move up any combination of things 3 spaces. So I could say move this one up 2 and this one up 1. And these are going to give us bonuses, multipliers to our endgame scoring. And the 3 categories are tracks that you've connected into, well, things that you've connected. If you've connected those, there's 3 level 5 cities. Each of them brought into your train network will be worth these points. The next one is the cities that you have out, stations you have out in cities. And the last one is for each of your Western Union offices. At the start of your turn, if all of your workers are on the board, you immediately pull all of them off and then take your turn. So that's how you get them all back to supply. And there's a lot of benefit in getting rid of your unskilled workers if you ever need to throw workers out. The end of the game is triggered once a player has cleared off everything to the left of their little company symbol. At this point, everyone gets 1 more turn around back to the start player, and then everyone gets 1 more turn. At this point, we tabulate points. To do points, it's used on you tabulate the points on this pad. You're going to get the points, as we mentioned over there, for the scoring tracks using their multiplier. So for this level 5 cities that you've brought in your network, these cities and the Western Union offices. Then you're going to get points for any milestones that you've completed. You're going to get points for any of these trains that you have flipped to their point side. You're going to get points for then your telegraph offices that are adjacent. So in this case, I have none, but if I had had a telegraph office here, then I would get the points printed between them because they're adjacent, so I'd get an additional 5 points there. Add up the totals, and whoever has the most points is the winner. So that's a look at Railroad Revolution. Now, the game itself carries a pedigree both in the designers and the publisher. And so when I first picked up this game, I expected a medium, heavier Euro game, and that was about all I knew about the game other than the theming of it. What I found in the box, however, is actually a lighter Euro game with a lesser playtime. Now, I would still call it a medium Euro, but it's definitely on the lighter side. The theme itself is trains, but it's not really a train game. This is an economic game where you're working on your company and its value and the rich get richer sort of aspect in it. And I really enjoyed that. As the game progresses on, your company becomes more valuable, which means selling it, pieces of it rather, becomes more valuable, and I really appreciated the thematic nature of that. The game itself does have some problems, however, in that it seems really unbalanced in certain respects, especially one specific strategy, the Western Union track. It's really trivial to move up that specific scoring track in terms of the multiplier, and putting in Western Union offices costs you nothing. So a player who catches on to this pretty quickly could take advantage of that. Now, the designers themselves did state in a forum post of a small change that I have tried where you make the cost moving up those final few paths on that track more expensive by tenfold. And that is a good start. It does change it. Because one thing I didn't mention in the overview is that when you are moving up those multiplier tracks, there are certain points where you have to give up something to advance further, such as maybe a share or money or a worker. Well, on the Western Union track, it's 50, 50, and 100. Well, that's trivial. You will always have $50 or $100 laying around most of the time. Moving that up to a 500 and 500 and 1,000 does make that track a little less appealing, and I think it helps to balance the game. I myself don't think that I'll play the game ever again without that change. The one thing I will state about the game is it's stressful. Constantly you feel like, how am I ever going to have enough money for this? And that's not something that's ever going to change within this game, and so it makes the game a slightly linear. You spend one turn getting the money you need, and you spend one turn spending the money, and that can get old. And that's my biggest gripe with the game, is that it can get old pretty quickly in terms of the replayability. It's a puzzle, and while there are some random factors in the game, such as the setup tiles for the cities themselves and the way you get your milestones, I don't feel it's enough to really make this game long-term replayable. The game itself is good. I enjoyed it every time I've played it, so I'm not going to take off a lot of points in terms of replayability because I'm not sure I'd get this game enough times to the table to really test the limits of that. The artwork in the game is typical What's Your Game. It fits in nicely with my other What's Your Game titles in my collection. You're going to get that mustardy yellow color board that we've all known and grown to love. Overall, the game does accomplish what it set out to do. You get the thematic sense of running a company and your company becoming worth more and expanding out. Again, my only concern with the game is going to be in terms of replayability. It does have a shorter playtime. I believe it's around 45 to 60 minutes, and that's been my experience so far. One other note that could be a potential problem for some people is the interaction between players. This game is very much multiplayer solitaire. While the only real interaction is getting those first player bonuses within each city and Western Union, it's not make or break. You're never really going to feel squeezed out by that, and using a gray worker on some of them can get you out of that. So that does have a slight issue in terms of some people's enjoyment of the game. However, I will say that gives an additional benefit, and that this game is actually playable solo. You could add a few more cities, player colors, adding into the board to take away some of those first player bonuses, and you could play this solo. I've done it a couple times. I'm actually a little surprised that they didn't make the game have a solo set of rules to it. For me, I'm going to keep the game in my collection, but I think I'm going to play it a little more sparingly instead of breaking out as many times as possible, which I normally do with games from this specific publisher. I hope that's given you an idea of how the game plays and whether or not it might be a good fit for your collection, whether you're a fan of What's Your Game titles or not, or just looking for a lighter medium Euro to fit into your collection. And I look forward to seeing you guys next time.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at DicetowerNetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.